Hey, Deanna, how are you?
Hi, thank you for having me today on your podcast.
Appreciate it. Yeah, and we had like a 20-minute intro call, just chatting, and we forgot to even start recording. So definitely the vibrant personality. I feel like it's going to be a good conversation. But for those who obviously don't know you, introduce yourself and tell a little bit about yourself.
So I am Diana Indries, and I own Better Topics, which is a platform where we're helping couples communicate better with each other through playing a game. As Better Topics itself is a physical card game and also an app as well that people can get and play to improve their relationship.
Awesome. So definitely the intimate part of the intimate relationships category of the Successful Millennials podcast. So definitely hits on one of the five, which is why I wanted to add your insight into this conversation. But as a millennial and as a person who is now married, and how has this Better Topics card game helped you understand your husband more?
Oh, well, it actually helped me understand him on more ways than one. First of all, it helped me understand him from a business point of view, if that makes
Okay.
sense. Because before I actually started working full-time on Better Topics, I had a corporate job for many years. And my husband, he ran his own businesses for many years, So when we got together, he had a totally different schedule than mine. And he always had a very let's say volatile schedule where he many times had to jump on last minute calls and everything to put out fires and stuff. And many times I would be quite not necessarily annoyed with that, but quite surprised by that. Me coming from a different mentality where I leave my job at 4. That's it. I leave everything at work until the next day. I cannot do anything, even if I have new ideas or whatever. I'll just write them on the list, and until the next day that I'm back in the office, nothing will change. So he never had that because, well, he was, working on his own businesses and he had to take care of them. So working on this and looking at it as a business, albeit, helping people as well through it, it actually helped me understand him a lot better and the frustrations that he was going through. And many times now when I get frustrated on certain things, he's the one like, see, I told you, see, now you understand.
Yeah.
And it also helped me to know him a lot more because after we've met, we got married very, very fast. And through the process of creating the game, because we've created it together, we had to play the game all the time.
Right.
And quite a lot, to develop the questions and to curate which ones we're going to use, how we're going to formulate them better, how are they working with the modifiers and the game elements, and how can we actually make it a playable and replayable game. And whilst we were going through all these details and figuring everything out, we had to play the game quite a lot. So we actually had to go into deeper things, discuss a lot of things regularly. And yeah, it helped me understand him a lot better from so many different points of view.
That's awesome. And we'll definitely get into how the game is played, because I did think it's the way we described it and we talked about it earlier is it's definitely more deeper than just your normal game. And we'll get into that. But I'm curious, was that the main inspiration? You said you got married to your husband quite fast. So was it more like you wanted to learn more about him? Was it like you saw some of your friends struggle in their relationships and you thought, how can I help them? What gave you the inspiration to create Better Topics?
It was a combination of things, really. So the idea came at a time when, as I said, I was working in corporate for so many years and I did want a change because I got to a level in corporate level where I wanted to get, when I first went into it, and I realized that position is not the way I imagined it to be. And I didn't have the freedom of creativity that I wanted. I wanted to do something else, where I can actually use my creative imagination, where I can use my time to help people more, because albeit in corporate as well, I was helping people in a way because I was in NHS, which is the National Health System in the UK. So I was working at one of the biggest hospitals in the UK. So, if you think about it from a bit of abstract way-ish, I was still helping people because I was, helping manage the hospital and everything. But to have more of a direct link, you know, to people that I'm helping with, and to actually feel that I am helping people, you know, because in corporate you don't really see that. It's very rare that even patients would come to you and say, oh, thank you for what you're doing, because especially in admin side of things, nobody thinks of all those people that are doing all the work, you know, behind the doctors, behind the nurses and everything. So I had that going on, you know, and I was trying to figure out, what am I good at actually? What could I do something else, you know, other than corporate? And we kind of brainstormed this quite a while with my husband, and he pointed out that I'm really good at keeping our relationship, you know, and working on it and investing time in it and prioritizing it basically. And at the same time, we've seen some of our friends who, although they are really good people, you know, as individuals, they are amazing people. You can, you know, connect with them, you can chat with them for hours and stuff. Together they were miserable because they would not just talk, they would just not talk to each other, you know. So my friend would come to me and complain about all the issues that they were having in a relationship, and every time I would ask her, like, but did you tell him, you know, like, you are telling me, but I cannot really help with anything, you know, you have to tell your partner all these. So, and she was like, well, I cannot even tell him, I don't know how to tell him. And you know, they had all these problems going on. So also in the same time as well, so in parallel with all these, both me and my husband, we love board games, and we have tons of them at home, and it is one of our favorite activity to do together when we have our weekly date night, especially because we both work in front of a laptop all day. When is our date night, we prefer to take our eyes off a screen as much as possible and into the real world and actually do something together, either, you know, having a walk, or better yet, even play a game. So we did get a lot of so-called couple games out there, but we were really, really disappointed to see that they weren't actually games. They were one-off questions that, you know, once you go through them, you ask them, you're kind of done with it, and you can just move on and give it away, throw it away, whatever, you know, it's done. You cannot really reuse it. And also, if you've been with someone for a while, they don't even make any sense yet anymore. I mean, you know, I mean, I told my husband, you know, if you've been living with me for a few years and you don't know how much I love chocolate, we have such a big issue that any of these cards cannot really solve for us. So I'm like, yeah, they're not games. So we were quite disappointed with that. And then, you know, brainstorming through a lot of things, we just got the idea, what if we make ours, you know? And then we got into thinking of what would it even take to make ours. So, you know, the more we looked into it, the more sense it actually made. So we started working on the questions and on the modifiers, and how can we make it an actual game, and what rules we can create for it. Because that's the beauty of it. You can be as creative as you want when you create your own game, and you can give it any rules that you want, really.
And let's talk a little bit. I do want to, I love the point that you made, that communication is essential. We'll come back to that piece a little bit, but let's talk about how the game is played, because like you said, a lot of couple games or those types of, like, do you or don't you, or it's trivia questions essentially. And that's something that you can eventually, you'll memorize just by playing it enough, and it doesn't even matter if it's right or wrong. So this, you say it's a little bit deeper of questions. What, give us some example of the categories of questions, or some questions that you actually have in the cards that the other person has to answer.
So in the main deck, we have 3 different categories, which are memories, goals, and curiosities, you know. And alongside that, we have a lot of what we call modifiers. So a really good question, one of my favorite questions actually from the deck, is, when did you need me most last week and I wasn't there? Now, I really love this question because, you know, the more you ask your partner about this, the more you can see what type of pattern there is. You know, when are those exact moments when your partner needs you most? So that, you know, in the future, you can actually, you know, anticipate when those moments arise and just be there for your partner, so they don't have to ask you all the time to be there for them, you know, because you kind of recognize the pattern and you know when it's coming. And you know, if someone, you know, wants to answer this question perfect, but they can use the modifiers to make it and play it as a game, so they can reverse the question and get their partner to answer it, or they can even cancel the question if they feel a bit uncomfortable. So with the game itself, you basically give out 5 or 7 cards to each player, and then you start playing by, the first one is starting to by asking a question. The other one can either use the modifier if it makes sense with the question, or just answer it, and so on. And the more you answer questions and you ask questions, you put the cards down, and whoever gets rid of their cards from their hands first, that person wins the game, that round basically. And there are certain rules that people can use or cannot use depending how they want to do it, on who actually wins for the day, for the night, or whatever. And they get to choose their own reward as well from the rewards deck that comes with the main deck. So basically we're encouraging people to talk to each other more about relationship stuff and about each other, and do more stuff as well for each other and together.
Yeah, and I think even like the person who asks that question, like when did you need it most and I wasn't there, like you'll think of that yourself as the person who asked to be like, oh, what if they reverse it, right? Even if they don't, like you start having that conversation, even if it's not externally to your partner, you think of it yourself and you learn more about yourself, which I think is extremely important. If you know yourself well and you know your partner well, you can kind of overcome pretty much any struggles, assuming that you guys have the same communication patterns. So
now
I love the idea.
Sorry, I don't want to scare your listeners, into thinking that all of the questions are this deep. They aren't. There are some very fun ones as well there. So the questions kind of range because we wanted to still keep the fun in it, but still touch on important subjects as well for couples and, relationships.
Yeah, and I think having the rewards at the end, the rewards deck, like I remember you were telling me, what is it, like get a free massage or something like that, do the chores for a week, like those types of things, keep it fun, playful. It's nothing like hefty that you have to buy $1,000 ring or whatever, but it's just something that keeps it interesting.
Unless you want
to. Yeah, it's like it keeps it interesting. So I love the idea of the game. And then you mentioned the communication aspect there. We talked about it a couple of different times already. So how important is that in a relationship to you?
Well, not just to me, but I think to any relationship is crucial, as is in any business, if you think about it, as is in any family, in any friendship, in basically any side of our life. Although it is so important, it's quite a paradox to me that still we don't know how to communicate effectively. It's very, very, very interesting to me, this. And I realized, especially when I was in my corporate job, especially when I was going through management training, they used to teach us, things like how to recognize your own personality, other people's personality, how to talk to them effectively, how to get your team, to be excited about the project, on time, excited about delivering, the whatever they had to do on project, and so on. And many times then I was thinking, if people would implement these things in their relationship, it would improve them so much. And I started thinking, why is it that people don't do it? Is it just because they're not paid at home as they are at their job? Or is it because, maybe they're just tired by the time they get home and they don't want to go through all that, to use more mental power to think of how to ask certain questions or what questions to even ask? Because, in corporate, you kind of have to think of that yourself. So this also, helped us into creating the game, because we basically gave people the exact tool they need and they can use straight away without having to go through a lengthy course or anything. They just have to read the instructions, maybe watch our video on how to play it, and they can just play it. They don't have to think of the questions anymore because they are there. They don't have to think how to ask the questions, because that's very important as well. We've thought of those. So basically they just can start playing it, and if they don't like any question, they can just blame the game or us.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned that like having those deep conversations are a little difficult, especially in our age range, because we've started when you started seriously dating, there was already social media, there was a lot of apps, and it takes
Yes,
everything into asynchronous conversation where it's it's a messenger, it's a chat, and it's social media, so it's not like face to face actual dates, and or that's later in the process. So I guess when do you think is a good time to start having these deeper conversations? Is it obviously not date number one, maybe, but like, is it earlier in the dates when you guys are starting to get official, when you hopefully
mm,
before you get married, but where in that
yes.
process?
Ideally, it would be at least once, before you get married, preferably more times. I think it really depends on the people involved and how comfortable they are with each other, and how certain they are of what their own values are and what they want as an individual out of the relationship. And I don't mean physical things, as in I want a house, a car, and God knows what, but I
Right.
mean, what do they want to experience in that relationship? Some people just want security any way they see that. Some other people want loyalty. Some other people want a lot of passion. Some other people want, to be secure but still loved. Some people just want love in any form they get it. So it really depends on each person to come to terms of what they actually want to experience in a relationship. Now, ideally, people should get to this point before even going into a relationship, so even when they are in that initial stage of dating, they can kind of point out their minimum things that are not negotiable. And for example, I was quite blunt with my husband, well, now husband, and I think it was very at the very beginning. I don't know, it wasn't exactly the first date, but it would probably was the second, maybe the third or the fourth date. I already told him like what my values are, what my goals are. By that time we already talked about careers and jobs and paths in life and what we want to achieve. And once he decided that he really likes me as well. And at that point in time, I was living in the UK and he was living in Mexico, although we were originally from the same country. And before he moved to, when he decided that okay, he likes me and he wants to be in a relationship with me, I told him like, listen, before you move to the UK, I just want to warn you, like, if you move here, be prepared for a serious relationship. Otherwise, there's no point for you to come,
Right.
because I told him at that point in time, I didn't have the age or the energy necessary to, just wing it, see how it goes, and then 6 months later decide whether this is a real thing or not, or years later maybe. I
Right.
told him like, no, I want a serious relationship. Now, I didn't mention marriage necessarily because that for me, it wasn't an important thing necessarily, the marriage itself, but it was the commitment of a serious relationship. So now luckily he knew as well what he wanted, and because he also had a list of the things he wanted in a relationship. But and he decided to move to the UK, and then we were in a relationship, and then a couple of months later he proposed, and then 4 months later we got married.
Nice.
But I would suggest to people to have this discussion as early on. Again, maybe not the first date, but let's say third, fourth date, depending how the first few dates go. I would say I would have that conversation. Again, it really depends who you're talking to and how compatible you are with that person. I mean, the thing is, I used to have this type of conversations with other guys as well, when I was dating, and
Mhm.
many of them have fled, and many of them have disappeared after this type of conversation. And at that point in time, I was like, but what happened? Now thinking about it, I'm just happy they did, because it just means they weren't ready for what I was
Right.
ready. So I didn't lose my time anymore with them, which was great. Although in that moment when they actually just disappeared or they ghosted me,
Mhm.
it didn't feel pleasant at all. But I did understand that it is better like this, instead of spending too much time and then promising me what they cannot offer.
Yeah, and that's I want to say it's the responsible thing to do to ghost somebody, but it's at least nobody's wasting each other's time. You should at least be open and upfront.
Yes.
But I think it stems from the fact that people don't necessarily know what they want, right? And so I'm curious, can you play this game as a single person and just, I guess, play it on your own to help you understand, or at least get the gears churning in your mind to be thinking about what you truly want, what you hold as value?
So the game was created having couples in mind and helping them spark that conversation and those deep conversations, that many times are needed in a relationship, but people still don't have them. As a single person, I don't know, to be honest, because so many of the questions are related to the couple dynamic and how they're there for each other, how they're not there for each other, what plans they have together, what plans should they make together. So as a single couple, I don't think they would need the game necessarily until maybe they start dating. Also with the main deck, we have for people who want, to have more questions on specific topics, we have also extension decks. So we have extension decks on intimacy, on parenting, if that's important for them, and even extension deck for new couples. So repeatable questions that couples at the beginning, when they're still dating, they should be asking each other, these questions. So not necessarily people that are single per se, but people who are, dating, even if they just started dating, I think they could use it.
Awesome. And you mentioned that there's a physical deck and there's an app. How do those differ? Because obviously, in-person communication is a little bit better. It's a lot better than over an app. But how does the gameplay differ, and how has the effectiveness differed in your mind as well?
So what I've talked about so far and how it is played, it was about the physical game. As you mentioned, we do have an app as well that we've recently launched. And so the game, obviously when you play the physical game, you have to be there physically, unless maybe you're playing it through Zoom and both of them have the cards. I don't know, I've seen people doing it, it still worked. But normally, I would suggest for people to be there face to face. The app, I think, has the good thing to it that you can play it all day. Now, I'm not saying not to do anything, all day and just stay and play the app. But when you're working, for example, and your partner is working as well, or if one of you is traveling, or, if you're even in a long distance relationship as well, it works pretty well, that you can ping back and forth those type of questions, and you can still keep the conversation going, even if you're at work, for example, you can still ask a question, and then when your partner has time, they can still answer it. You don't have to wait for, maybe your date night or the weekend or whenever you have time to actually sit down and, play the physical game. You can play the game basically all the time, I mean, with my husband, we still play the game every day through the app mainly, because obviously all day we're working. We finish work very late, and then at night we just prefer to spend some time together, maybe not necessarily playing the physical game, but we know by that time we've already played so many questions throughout the day. And we still discuss some important things and so on. Another feature that the app has, what I really like, is that especially with the paid memberships, you don't have to type the answer anymore. You can just record it, like voice recording or even video recording, which I love because, I'm lazy. And if I can use technology to my advantage, why not? That's why it was created.
Exactly.
And a great feature that the app has are the weekly the weekly secret challenges. That was a mouthful. So basically each partner gets a secret challenge, and then they have to either do something for each other or together, and then they have to take a picture of it as well. And then the app is asking the partner, to confirm, showing their picture if, the other partner has done that challenge to them, or, they've done it together. And then if they confirm, then the partner who did the challenge gets points and the other one doesn't. But so basically, because both of them, they do get challenges, so they both end up getting points if they do their challenges. And the more points they get, the more things they can get with those points. So basically like extension decks, for example, on specific subjects that they want to talk about more. So basically we're encouraging people to talk more and, to have those conversations going more. And the more they talk, the more points they get, and the more points they get, the more things they can get with those points.
Okay, nice. And is that a new, what are some new things that are coming? You mentioned some of the extension decks. You mentioned like the app has recently been launched. Sounds like the game is continuously evolving. So for people who want to continue to jump in and they don't know when, or they're waiting for a certain thing to drop, what's next on the horizon for Better Topics?
So we have just recently launched the app itself. It has been testing till about a couple of months ago when we've actually launched it. We have the extension decks, which are ready, for people to purchase whenever they want. They can actually purchase it with money as well if they want to, or with points.
Okay.
I would suggest, to play more and then get more points, and then, go about it like that. So obviously you get different benefits with each membership type. There are three different membership levels, and with each membership you have different perks to it. But we are soon to launch a marketplace as well. So basically in that marketplace, people will be able to buy real stuff with the points earned in the game.
Oh,
so
nice.
Either these are, maybe books on relationships, courses on relationships, discounts maybe to courses or books, or discounts maybe to even couple holidays, to a lot of stuff that would help couples and, bring them together and encourage them to do things together, or maybe even, discounts or flowers even, or, stuff that help improving a relationship and the communication,
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea that you're merging not only your game, but like if you want to go on a couples retreat or something like that. Because I think it's, if for people who are earlier in their dating life and they don't necessarily live together, when you travel with somebody for like 5-6 days, you're obviously living with them only, and it's a kind of a small sneak peek into what it could be like when you live with each
Yes.
other. So that's a great idea that you're merging that, and I'm excited for when that happens.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, it is very true what you're saying. For example, in my previous relationship, I was not living with that person, and we did go on a weeks-long holiday together, which was a massive eye-opener. I didn't realize I was a early riser and he wasn't. He liked to sleep until about 12, and
Oof.
at 7 a.m. I was like already fidgeting because I didn't want to lose all day in bed and stay
Right.
up all night. I wanted to do stuff all day, especially because we are in a holiday place, rather than just stay in bed. I mean, we could have done that at home.
Yep. That's exactly how I am when I travel. I'm out at 6 a.m. I'm back
Yeah,
at 10 p.m. and I'm asleep like 10:30. It's trying to
exactly.
attack the city or the state, whatever you're in.
Exactly. So, as you say, a holiday like that can be a real eye opener. And after things like this happen, you can actually put in balance whether you are compatible or not, whether your values are there and aligned or not.
Yeah. And now that you guys have been playing the game almost all the time, obviously you guys both created it, you have put a lot of heart into the actual questions, and it's impacted your relationship in a positive way. How would you say it's impacted the other 4 categories that you guys both share? I mean, obviously the money, the health, the happiness, excuse me, and the career/purpose.
Well, it has impacted everything. Although in the beginning, the money was hit, the money category was actually took quite a hit because, I went from corporate job, earning quite a good income to no income for the first few months, until we started
Right.
actually sending the game out and everything. It did impact, well, everything else really, because I was at a point where, my finances were pretty okay. I already had a really good job when I met my husband. I already owned my house when I met him. So having him in my life improved my life, but I didn't rely on him or his
Right.
finances to help me with anything. But it did improve the relationship from the point that it improved, how to explain this? So because I already had all of those, finances and career was okay, and my health and mental health was okay. Having the relationship category set and very secure, and that, the happiness I got from that one category for me personally could not match all the categories together,
Wow.
So, and it's, how to explain this? It's a happiness, but not necessarily an ecstatic happiness that I'm gonna laugh out loud all day long.
Right.
But it's like a very nice, peaceful way of happiness, knowing that, there is this person here who I can share with the good and the bad, the ugly and the beautiful as well. We can go to a wedding together, even if we don't like the music at the wedding, none of us, we can still find funny stuff in the wedding. We can still have a dance at that wedding, or if we are going through difficult times, I know he's there, he's supporting me, he knows I am there, I'm supporting him. And having that stability in a relationship makes everything else worthwhile, and makes everything be easier, because you're not that constrained anymore to make a living, if that makes sense. You're not that constrained to hold on to a career that maybe you don't enjoy that much, because you have a support, even if it's just moral. Even if he wouldn't be able to support me financially, that would be fine. Even just for him to be there and give me that extra boost of confidence when I am doubting myself, So I think that having this amazing relationship just improved everything else, because I am a lot happier overall. I am more confident overall. And yeah, I think everything else just follows, the career. I've changed the career first, and then the money followed. And yeah, everything else just improved, really.
Yeah,
because now I ended up doing what I really enjoy, and make money out of it as well.
Yeah, it's
and I'm helping people.
It's a beautiful thing the way you word that. Like once you have the power of that relationship, it like trifolds or improves exponentially your happiness meter more than the other ones can, as long as the other ones didn't take as big of a hit, and they were covered obviously after you retired from corporate. So that's awesome, and I think it's a great way to end the interview. But before we do that, I do want to make sure people will find a way to get the game and find a way to follow you more. So where can they find you?
So they can find me on Facebook. I am also on Instagram at Better Topics. I am on YouTube on Better Topics as well. And if they want to get the game, they can get the physical one either from our website, which is at bettertopics.com, or from Amazon, US, UK, Australia, and Canada. And also, if they want the app, if they're not very keen on physical card games, they can get the app from Google Play Store or Apple Store as well. And before I go, if they use the code SAMI10, then they also get their first month off of any of our subscriptions.
Oh, I appreciate that. That's awesome. And I definitely have all those links on the show notes, and plug it for sure, because I think obviously right now I'm single, but I've been dating around trying to find something. So if that ever happens, we'll definitely have the game on deck and be able to play that. So I appreciate the conversation, and definitely was very interesting for me to learn a lot about how the game can be played and how you can improve everything.
Thank you so much for having me today.